What up everyone, I am HAVOC and it's time for the final game review of the year. Final video of the year. So as you all know, this year has had a lot of heavy hitters in terms of games. 2 of which were sequels we never thought we would see. And those were Death Stranding 2, which we already reviewed, and Ghost of Yōtei. Both sequels to games that I love very, very much. And in this game we're talking about the latter. So without further ado, let's jump right in, shall we? Buckle up, kids. This is going to be a long one. Ghost of Yōtei is the long-awaited sequel to 2020's Ghost of Tsushima. And with Tsushima being one of my favorite games of all time, you can kind of guess why this game was way up there on my list of most anticipated games. So naturally, Yōtei follows the same standard formula as its predecessor, a samurai game blending awesome samurai sword fighting action with stealth and cunning, all set in the beautiful, wide-open, semi-historically accurate land of Japan. In this game's case, you play as Atsu, returning to her home of Ezo, what we know today as Hokkaido, to reap terrible vengeance on the Yōtei Six, a group of outlaws who murdered her family and burned her home to the ground, leaving her for dead. And so Atsu takes up the mantle of the Ghost, or the Onryo, to bring her family peace. Now if you don't know me, I love a good revenge tale, so that premise alone had me excited, but I'll talk more on that later. For now, let's focus on the gameplay. If you play Ghost of Tsushima, you will feel right at home starting Yōtei. But that's not to say the game doesn't throw any curveballs at you, because it definitely does. Some of the core abilities you had from the start or near the start of Tsushima are not present at first in Yōtei, like your focused hearing to detect enemies. That alone had me adjust my approach to combat in this game, making stealth a bit harder to pull off at first. But I'll be honest, I prefer it that way. Because just like Tsushima, you have the option to challenge your enemies head on with the good old standoff. And wouldn't you believe it, it's just as satisfying as before. But this time around, on occasion, you can pull off dual standoffs, where you are accompanied by a partner who will take out an enemy at your side. Usually it's the wolf, but there are times during the story where other characters will stand in for it. When I first saw the wolf pull up, I was like, oh, she's gonna help distract enemies? Cool. Then she proceeds to tear the dude's throat out at the same time I swing my sword. Oh, fuck the hell, yes. Good girl, Kiba. That's what I named her, by the way. Kiba for Fang. Anyway, when you're actually in combat, it's pretty straightforward. One versus many, watch your surroundings, and watch your enemies. Don't button mash, like clockwork for a Tsushima veteran like me. But then the enemies pull out some new tactics, like disarming you. When I first saw this, I admit, I panicked a little. You can fight barehanded, but it's advised against. But on the reverse side, you can disarm your enemies too. And sometimes you can even pick up their dropped weapons and huck them right at them. So goddamn satisfying. It really added a new layer to the combat, where you can not only grab their dropped weapons, but also empty sake jars just laying around and chuck them to distract, stun, injure, or kill an enemy out of reach. Or when you're fighting with the wolf, she will go after the enemy you're throwing something at. Now I will say sometimes I wanted to fight the enemies solo, but then the wolf would stroll up out of nowhere, quite frequently, which could get a little annoying. But luckily there's an option to turn the wolf appearances off, so there is that. Anyway, that added a whole lot of versatility, but it doesn't stop there. Instead of the stances seen in Tsushima, they are swapped out for whole new weapons entirely. Aside from your katana, you can get a second one to dual wield, which is best used against spearmen. My personal favorite, just saying, I'm a sucker for dual wielding. You can also get a yari, a Japanese spear, which is better for enemies using kusarigama, a sickle tied to a chain. Speaking of, you can get a kusarigama of your own to deal with shield men. Then there's the odachi, a supersized version of the katana which is better used against brutes, which is also really fun to swing around, especially if you're a fan of a certain archetype of character. And hell, they even got with the times of the 1600s and added a musket and a flintlock pistol on top of the already existing half-bow and longbow. Which, by the way, using a pistol in the standoff, it had me dying of laughter the first time around.
Aw, she's so fucking cute! Oh shit, she's packing heat!
I will say again, the combat in this game is so goddamn fun. Even the stealthy, sneaky ways can be fun, particularly after you get the kusarigama, where you can pull off a scorpion and...
Get over here!
Assassinations are back and look and feel just as brutal, especially when you unlock and max out the chain assassinations. So damn satisfying. And just like Tsushima, the game gives you a plethora of charms or perks that accentuate your playstyle, whether up close and personal, sneaky, or ranged, alongside your armor choice. Now with all this talk of charms and such, you would think that you could very well cheese the game and make things that much easier for you, right? Well, yes, but also no. While they do help, the game is still very difficult. Or it can be very difficult, especially when you meet a certain someone by the name of Takizo the Unrivaled. Named such for a very good reason. Non-flashbacks, man. He is, by all accounts, that super secret, super hard, secret boss that you should fight at the end of the game. Not me staying up till 3 AM trying to beat the fucker. Now speaking of Takizo and bosses you can fight, one of the best additions to this game is the bounties. Spread throughout the map or just encountered by mistake are bounties for you to hunt and kill to gain coin and vanity gear. While there are plenty of them, I do kind of wish there were more, as I blasted through them real quick. DLC maybe? One can hope. Moving on, alongside the bounties, there's a huge amount of things to find in the game, in classic open world style. Like in Tsushima, you have shrines to pray at and fox dens to find. And pet the little guys. Hot springs to relax in to regain your health, and reflect on Natsu's past. Booty! Bamboo strikes to increase your spirit gauge, which is significantly smaller than Tsushima, by the way, and vanity gear to find, and even a coin-flicking minigame known as Zeni Hajiki, alongside the enemy encounters, and even just coming across NPCs to talk to, which can often lead to a side quest without even meaning to, and wolf dens to strengthen your bond with the wolf. One could say there's too much, as I often found myself getting distracted from my main objective, going off and doing said things. Now sure, one could say that's part of the game's enjoyment, which it absolutely is, but the sheer amount of stuff to do and frequency of it can feel overwhelming, with myself and many other players not even getting to the main story without doing a lot of the side stuff first. Definitely factors into open world bloat, as they call it. But that just comes with the territory. A wide open world with nothing to do, That's just boring. Now, the one thing about the game I definitely wasn't a huge fan of was the touchpad minigames, like the camping or the sumie drawings or the shamisen segments. The first couple times, okay, cool, but then it would happen so frequently and spontaneously that it disrupted the flow of the game. Again, not an overly bad thing, it gives you the option to skip it, but still something worth mentioning. But moving on, let's talk about the game's story. So like I said before, this game is a classic revenge tale. Nothing too original. There's plenty of character and story beats that you see coming from a mile away. But that's not to say it's bad. Not even close. Like I said, I love myself a good revenge tale. My absolute favorite movie of all time is The Crow. Which, by the way, if you dress Atsu up right, you can give her kind of a samurai crow vibe, which I absolutely went for. Anyway, while the story isn't as well thought out or original as Tsushima's, which felt more about a personal identity crisis with Jin's life as a samurai being brought into question, this one hits a little more close to home, and is definitely the more emotionally driven, as revenge tales often are and should be. And Erika Ishii, who plays Atsu, did a really good job portraying the rough-cut, angry, rowdy, revenge-driven character. She can also be very tender and caring, and very well thought out too, especially when she meets two particular characters. Those being Oyuki, who has a very good story arc and a very multifaceted character with a very interesting twist, and a certain someone who, for spoiler reasons, I will avoid talking about. Now with the other characters, particularly the villains, the Yōtei 6 and Lord Saito, each of them have their own quirks, their own personalities, but it's Saito himself who is by far the most interesting of them. A former samurai turned outlaw turned warlord, seeking to create his own sovereign state away from the shogunate, even if his motives are highly questionable. Why does that sound familiar?
Big boss.
I could not help but draw that comparison. Now, while Saito is indeed an interesting character, he sadly gets shafted by how little screen time he has, though his presence is felt throughout the story. I would have liked to see more of him, honestly. Again, maybe DLC. Now, this isn't a spoiler per se, but I do wish that they handled the post-game a bit better, whereas instead of carrying on after the ending, after everything is said and done, you enter this weird point of no return limbo right before the final boss fight that you can't even replay until the New Game Plus update. You see what I'm saying? It just felt awkward being stuck in that limbo state. That's just me. But moving on from the story, the one thing I will absolutely put way above Tsushima is the soundtrack. My God, the soundtrack to this game is beautiful. Capturing the feudal Japan setting and the emotional weight that accompanies it, along with the angstiness of revenge, is just put together so beautifully. It definitely had that pseudo samurai film / spaghetti western vibe to it, and I love that. And it's not even just background music either, or the native soundtrack. It's also used in the game as a mechanic. And they even go and pull a little bit of a Zelda, where you can play music to solve puzzles or to lead you to new objectives, stuff like that. Which reminds me, this game also has some bonus modes to change up the vibe. Just like in Tsushima, you see the returning Kurosawa mode. This time around, though, there is also Miike mode, named after famed samurai cinema filmmaker Takashi Miike of 13 Assassins fame, which adds extra blood and mud to give more of a gritty feeling, as well as tightens the camera to feel more personal and up close. Then there's Watanabe mode, named after Shinichiro Watanabe, director of famed anime series Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, which replaces some of the soundtrack with lo-fi hip-hop beats, which can be a total vibe. For my New Game Plus playthrough, I have both of these turned on. Definitely a nice change. I just wish there was more tracks in the lo-fi stuff, which currently caps out to 6, 8, somewhere in there. But anyway, with all that being said, what did I think of Ghost of Yōtei? In case you couldn't tell, I loved it. With very few missteps, namely the open world bloat and a somewhat generic story, The combat is amazing, the graphics are goddamn gorgeous, and the soundtrack is phenomenal. And that is why I am giving Ghost of Yōtei a whopping gallant rating of 9.5 out of 10.
It's beautiful.
If only we had some sake to go with the view.
Honestly, folks, I would say this goes neck and neck with Donkey Kong Bonanza for my game of the year, for totally different reasons. Even if Yōtei didn't get nominated, or win, for those who come after. But anyway, I didn't just go so far as to get the Platinum Trophy, I 100%ed the game. Which is kind of odd that they're two different things, but hey, still did it. And oddly enough, this is a game I actually do want to see get DLC. I want more, goddammit. Now the question is, do I like Yōtei more than Tsushima? Honestly, I'm not sure. While this game definitely improved on a lot from Tsushima, I do still think I prefer Tsushima just a bit more, though it's definitely had more content added and time to stew over the years. For comparison's sake, I gave Ghost of Tsushima a 4.5 back when I was doing the out of 5 rating. So now it's more like a 9.75, maybe even a 10. Now, speaking of Tsushima, there is a quest that involves Jin in this game, giving the original Ghost a proper send-off, and it is beautifully done. But I will leave it at that. But anyway, folks, that's about all I have to say about this one. And with it being December, or rather near the end of December, this will be the last video for the year, as I have to get started on working on the new stuff for the new year. So in the meantime, folks, I'm yelling HAVOC. Wreak some havoc, happy holidays, and I'll see you in the next one.